Welcome back to Keep It Electric with Tremayne Person. This is episode 68. After weeks of hearing crickets from the Mariners front office, we finally had a whirlwind of activity. A week packed with moves, decisions. There's plenty to unpack, so no fluff, no filler. We're diving right in. But before that, let me hit you with a couple reminders. If you haven't already, please follow the show's Instagram page. It's at Keep It Electric. It's the easiest way to stay connected. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, a positive review goes a long way in keeping the show going strong. Your feedback fuels me to bring you fresh content every week, so don't hold back. I'm always active and responsive on Instagram. Drop by, say hello, and as always, a huge thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. So let's talk some baseball. Before we get to the Mariners news, we're kicking things off with a few updates from around the league. Pete Alonso is hitting a wall in contract talks with the New York Mets. This seems to be a situation that's in flux. It could be different. And what I'm about to say could be different from the news when you actually hear this, or if there's a new update. They've reportedly offered a 3-year deal with opt-outs to Pete Alonso. Money is keeping both sides at a standstill. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays are lurking in the background. They could swoop in if Alonso and the Mets don't reach a deal soon. Spring training is right around the corner, so the Mets, they want some answers. They need answers fast. Either they lock him in or they pivot and make moves to prepare for life without him. Now, if the Blue Jays can pull this off, it could be a game changer for that franchise, especially their roster. It would be a clear message to their stars like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, that they are serious about winning. So they really, really would probably like to lock Pete Alonso down. Roki Sasaki, he has a short list now. He's one of the most exciting talents out of Japan, if probably the most exciting talent out of Japan this offseason. He's narrowed his list down to just 3 teams: the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and the Padres. No shocker that the Dodgers are in the mix. They've got the cash. They've got the championships. The Blue Jays are also a contender, but to me, in my opinion, Sasaki seems like a perfect fit for the Padres. The Padres have the need. He'd bring the energy that they're looking for. That said, the Dodgers' depth in pitching, it raises questions about where he would slot in. They already have like 10 starting pitchers, so Sasaki to the Padres just feels right, but as always, we'll see what happens. The next one is Jesse Winker's redemption arc here. Former Mariner Jesse Winker, he signed a 1-year deal worth $8 million to return to the New York Mets. If you remember, Winker's time in Seattle was polarizing, to put it mildly. Love him or hate him, most fans were not sad to see him go. From our perspective here in Seattle, his work ethic or lack thereof work ethic did not sit well with the fans, did not sit well with a lot of people on the roster during his Mariners stint. Credit is where it's due here, though. Winker, he's worked hard to rebuild his career. He showed up in better shape last year. If you don't remember, he looked overweight. I don't know if that had anything to do with his injuries when he was in Milwaukee, but he showed up in better shape last year. He stole some bases before people realized that he might steal, because he's not a fast guy, but he was stealing some bases in Washington. And then he proved that he just still has some value. So from my own experience watching him in Seattle, he didn't seem like a guy who was putting the work in. I sat in on several batting practices. It was more of a social hour for him than actual reps. He didn't really communicate well with the rest of the team either during that time, but maybe he needed a change of scenery, and clearly New York suits him. He's a Buffalo guy. So, he found his groove with the Mets, and for that, I've got to say kudos to him. Now, let's talk about the Mariners. That's the heart of the matter. This is one of the rare episodes in recent memory here where there's actual meat on the bone, and I couldn't be happier. For a while, it felt like we were just kind of twiddling our thumbs, waiting for some shred of news. But this week, the Mariners gave us plenty to talk about. So let's start with arguably the biggest signing of the week, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this is a blockbuster move. I'm not going to build it up like that. It's not blowing the roof off, but it is solid. It's smart. It fits exactly what the Mariners are looking for. So I'm calling it a good signing. The Mariners agreed to 1 year, $3.5 million deal with utility player Donovan Solano. That deal also has an additional $1 million in performance incentives. My take, I like it. I don't love it, but I do like it. Some fans are quick to compare this to Tommy La Stella, but I need to stop you right there. This is not that. I'm a self-proclaimed La Stella hater. Uh, this is not the same situation. La Stella was a miss from the jump. Solano, on the other hand, he checks a lot of boxes that the Mariners are looking for. So if you look at his track record, it speaks for itself. He broke out in 2019 with the Giants. He was 31 at that time. He's been really good and really consistent since then. He hasn't hit below 280 in a single season since then. And while he doesn't have any pop, really, he's reliable. He rarely strikes out. He has an impressive on-base percentage, and he can spray the ball all over the field. Defensively, he's versatile. He can cover second, first, and third base. He's listed as a second base right now. This is exactly the kind of flexibility that the Mariners are looking for. He's not a speedster on the base passes, so don't look for that there. But his experience and ability to play multiple positions give the Mariners options to manipulate the lineups and matchups, which is what they love to do over the past couple seasons. An interesting tidbit is Solano has only had 2 seasons with negative wins above replacement, and it was just a hair below wins above replacement. Both of those seasons were in Miami in 2014 and 2015, and even then those numbers were, again, just under 0. In 2015, he actually shared the field with Ichiro during Ichiro's brief stint with Miami. So, there's some relatability there. From 2016 to 2019, Solano bounced around the minors before he found his groove in San Francisco. And since then, he's consistently delivered a positive wins above replacement, proving that he does belong in the big leagues. Now, again, let's be real. This isn't a power move. It's not the power move that some fans were looking for. But we've talked about this before. The Mariners weren't likely to make splashy signings this offseason. They said it themselves. Solano is an upgrade over Josh Rojas, just a hair. And they signed him for roughly the same price that they would have paid for Rojas if they kept him. The kicker here is a player like Solano could make a tangible difference for the Mariners. Hear me out. I know this sounds crazy. I don't think I'm crazy, but the Mariners have missed the playoffs by just 1 and 2 games over the past 2 seasons. Adding a guy like Solano who could help win you a couple extra games. Like if you look at his statistics, his win probability rate is pretty high. So this guy could help you win a couple extra games. That is exactly what Seattle needs to tip the scales. So again, I'm not saying Donovan Solano makes the Mariners a World Series contender, but what he does do is he strengthens their position as a playoff contender. And for a team that's been on the cusp, that's exactly the kind of move that matters. So, again, I'm not saying that they knocked it out of the park, but this was a really good signing for the Mariners. Now, for the second notable transaction of the week, this is not a signing, it's more of a trade. And I would love to blow this one out of the park, but I know that a lot of people would not be coming along with me on that ride if I try to talk this thing up. So I'm not even going to do that. The Mariners acquired shortstop Miles Mastrobuoni from the Chicago Cubs after he was DFA'd. So let me tell you, there's really only a few ways anyone could know this guy. Number 1, you're a Cubs fan who's seen him play. Number 2, you remember his stint with the Tampa Bay Rays in 2022. Or number 3, and this is the way that I know him best, you've heard the Braves announcers have an absolute blast with his name every time he steps up to the plate. So if you don't know the reference, do yourself a favor and look it up. It's a good laugh. I wouldn't be surprised if Mariners fans end up having some fun with that too, but I only think that fun would come at his expense if he's actually playing well. So let's put the name fun aside and focus on the move itself. I'll be honest, I don't love it. I don't even think I even like it. I'm Unless the Mariners have some secret insight into his bat and how to develop it, Miles Mastrobuoni offers next to nothing offensively. His numbers at the plate so far in his MLB career don't inspire any confidence at all. Where Mastrobuoni does have his value is with his glove. The guy is a defensive highlight reel. He's listed as a shortstop, but he has the versatility to play anywhere in the infield, plus outfield if needed. I could see him being more useful in late game situations when the Mariners need a defensive upgrade or if they want to give Donovan Solano or another regular infielder a breather. He's got some speed. He's capable of stealing a base or two if the opportunity arises, but I'm not going to sugarcoat that either. His glove is the main and honestly the only selling point. So the Mariners sent cash considerations to the Cubs for Mastrobuoni. It was probably via Venmo. He fills a spot on the 40-man roster, but his lack of offensive production makes him a fringe player in my eyes. I would not be surprised if we see him shuttling back and forth between Tacoma and Seattle throughout the season. So the move doesn't excite me. It does add some depth. If the Mariners use him as a defensive specialist in the right spots, he could have some value. That said, if he can't develop a more reliable bat, I'm not sure how long he'll stick around. So this is a low-risk move for the Mariners, and I'm not jumping for joy. Nobody should be. It's a piece to the puzzle, and hopefully they have a plan. Now, speaking of cash considerations or Venmo payments, as I like to joke, Jerry Dipoto, he was busy last week. The Mariners, they reacquired catcher Blake Hunt from the Baltimore Orioles, who had also designated him for assignment. And the Mariners sent over a Venmo payment for Blake Hunt. And while we don't know the exact amount, it's worth noting that this cash doesn't come out of the team's international free agent pool. So we don't have to worry about that. The Mariners are still set on that front, and I'll touch some more on that later. If you remember Hunt, he was previously part of the Mariners system before being traded in a disastrous deal for Mike Baumann. That experiment didn't pan out for the Mariners, but with Hunt being DFA'd from Baltimore, clearly Seattle sees enough potential in reacquiring him back into the organization. So this move also addresses like a glaring issue that was on the Mariners roster to begin with. It was catcher depth. Only Cal Raleigh was the only guy listed on the 40-man roster. If you could include Mitch Garver in there, but who knows how often he's really going to catch. The main goal is just keeping him healthy. So Nick Raposo, who we had just acquired, was designated for assignment after the acquisition of Miles Mastrobuoni and Donovan Solano. Hunt might not be the long-term answer behind the plate for depth, but he does fill that role, and he could compete for backup reps. The acquisition of Hunt also came at the cost of Samad Taylor, who was designated for assignment. We made room on the roster for Hunt. Taylor, the second baseman, only had 5 at-bats for the Mariners last season. He went 2 for 5. He scored both times he reached base. It's very, very, very small sample size. Taylor was buried in the Mariners organizational depth. I mean, hopefully he could get picked up by another team, but he is in the middle of a logjam at second base. If he clears waivers, there's a chance he stays within the system. That being said, like seeing him in the Mariners infield again, I think that is a long shot. So the Mariners also claimed Tyler Jay, 30-year-old left-handed reliever and former first-round draft pick. He's going to be an addition to the bullpen. Seattle's bullpen doesn't have a lot of left-handers, so this move makes sense like from a matchup perspective. However, there's a question mark around Jay's role in the organization. He could serve as an insurance policy for injury-prone guys, maybe like a guy like Taylor Saucedo, but it's unclear whether he'll stick on the 40-man roster. Jay is just a depth piece for now, and he might have some potential. He has potential to be seen in a Mariners uniform down the road. Okay, so let's continue diving into what has really been a busy week for the Mariners. We're gonna dive into a crucial piece of offseason business. That's arbitration. The Mariners successfully avoided arbitration court and reached agreements with several key players. They ensured that they'll be in the fold for the upcoming season. For those unfamiliar, I'm going to break down arbitration. It's just the process where players still under team control negotiate their salary for the upcoming season with the team holding their rights. So if those two sides can't reach an agreement by the middle of January, both submit a proposed salary to a third party, which then determines the final figure. So thankfully, the Mariners avoided that scenario entirely with some pretty important names. Randy Rosarina agreed to $11.3 million, Logan Gilbert $7.5, George Kirby $4.3, Cal Raleigh $5.6, and Trenton Thornton at $2.1 million. I believe Taylor Saucedo and Gabe Spire also came to terms with the Mariners as well. All this adds up to a $22 million increase in payroll, which may very well represent the Mariners' plans or the planned $15 to $20 million offseason spending increase that they had been floating around at the beginning of this offseason. So if that's the case, the Mariners might be signaling that their roster building efforts are mostly complete, barring any foreseen opportunities. The 40-man roster that you're looking at right now might just be the 40-man roster that we'll be looking at come opening day. So breaking this down a little bit more, it's interesting that both Gilbert and Kirby settled for less than their projections. I don't know if that was a strategic decision on both of their parts. Perhaps that was to maintain goodwill for future contract negotiations, or it might simply reflect the Mariners' ability to negotiate favorable deals. Cal Raleigh, I think this is the most notable part, or the most notable agreement of all. He's coming off of a phenomenal season. He won both the Gold Glove and the Platinum Glove. Raleigh set a new high mark for first-year arbitration eligible catchers, with earning $5.6 million this year. For context, Dodgers catcher Will Smith earned $5.25 in 2023 during his first arbitration year. So Raleigh has now raised the bar for future catchers in similar situations. Raleigh's contributions, I say this so much lately, his contributions to the Mariners go far beyond his defensive prowess. He's a cornerstone of the team. His offensive impact is huge. He plays a premium position. He is invaluable to this franchise. So this arbitration deal locks him in for 2024. I still think it's time for the Mariners to seriously consider a long-term extension. The longer they wait, the higher the price tag is for him. And every day without a deal increases the chances that we won't be seeing Cal Raleigh spend the majority of his career in a Mariners uniform. I am very concerned about that. So with these arbitration deals in the books, I think it brings some clarity to the Mariners offseason budget. If you look at it, they freed up roughly $4.3 million by not re-signing certain players and outright releasing others. That freed up the cash that was essentially reallocated to acquire Donovan Solano, Miles Mastroboni, Tyler Jay, Blake Hunt, and Hagen Danner. So as things stand, this could very well be the roster the Mariners roll out and roll into the season. Now, of course, this is baseball. Things can change in a heartbeat. Trades, injuries, surprising free agent opportunities. I really don't see them opening up their checkbook more right now. But anything can happen that could shake this up. So these arbitration agreements, they're not the splashiest headlines, but they're critical to the Mariners' immediate success. So you keep players like Kirby, Gilbert, and Raleigh happy, under team control, that they're the foundation of this team's future. But make no mistake, again, the Mariners must prioritize locking down Cal Raleigh for the long term. So the move suggests the front office believes in the core group, and while I think there's room for a bigger splash, the team might feel that they're ready to compete as is. So let's hope the approach pays off, because the clock is ticking. Fans, myself included, we're hungry for return to the playoffs. So we're also going to touch on the latest developments. I'm still catching up on this myself, but it's important to highlight here. The international prospect signing period began yesterday, and the Mariners, they were busy making moves. A lot of attention was initially on their potential pursuit of Roki Sasaki. They were really stacking up their IFA dollars. But with the latest updates, it's clear that they weren't going to land Sasaki. So what did they do? They signed 13 players, including 5 ranked in the MLB's top 100 international prospects list, several of those in the top 50. The standout being, Yorger Bautista. Yorger Bautista. He's I kind of butchered that. I do apologize, but he's a 17-year-old Venezuelan outfielder. He's ranked the second highest international prospect in the last 13 years, trailing only Felnin Celestin, who, if you remember, he's in the Mariners organization. We signed him in 2023. So Batista, he's 6'1", bats lefty, throws lefty, looks like another potential gem in the Mariners international pipeline. The Mariners have a track record of success with this. They've done a really impressive job with this in the most recent years with their international scouting and development. Julio Rodriguez is the shining example of what their international program can produce. However, prospects are exactly that. They are prospects. These guys are 16, 17, 18 years old. There's no guarantee what these young players will become, but the Mariners' ability to consistently identify top-tier talent, that's a positive sign for the organization's future. Whether these prospects develop into impact players or become trade chips for future moves, the Mariners are clearly maintaining a strong farm system, and they're playing the long game. So only time is going to tell how much these signings will contribute to the team's success, but it looks like and sounds like they're moving in the right direction. Now, with all the recent moves, the Mariners roster is really starting to take shape right now. You got Donovan Solano, he's penciled in as the starting second baseman. So Dylan Moore is no longer playing 2 positions in the infield. He is listed as the starting third baseman. Luke Raley is listed as the starting first baseman. I do feel like that could potentially change if the Mariners decide to bring back Justin Turner, which has been strongly rumored. That said, looking at the infield heading into this season compared to last year, I have to admit it's hard to see much improvement on paper. Solano provides a marginal upgrade, but it's very marginal. It's slight. It's, again, 1 or 2 games. The roster feels very similar to what we've seen the past 2 seasons. So the reality is the AL West is not going to be a cakewalk. The A's and the Angels have both been making moves. They're going to be more competitive in this coming season. And the Mariners haven't done much to separate themselves from the pack. So as it stands, this team looks like it'll be right on the playoff bubble again. Good enough to stay in the conversation, but not a lock for October. Spring training is right around the corner. I think it's time that we take a closer look at the AL West as a whole. I think I'm going to pencil this in for a topic for next week. How do the Mariners stack up against their division rivals? Let's dive into that, the rosters, the moves that those teams made, and the potential of each team in the following episode next week. So that's going to do it for this episode. As always, thank you for spending part of your day with me here. Don't forget to follow the podcast Instagram account at Keep It Electric for updates. If you have a moment, please leave a review. It helps the show grow and it keeps me motivated to bring you new content every week. So until next time, keep it electric. Go Mariners.